I died at 34 from organ failure brought on by years of malnutrition and exhaustion. My husband Liam was at the hospital, but not in my room. He was in the private suite 3 floors up where his childhood friend Amber was recovering from a minor cosmetic procedure, holding her hand and assuring her that everything would be fine. I'd given him my kidney 6 months earlier when Amber needed a transplant. I'd donated my bone marrow 3 years before that when she had leukemia. I'd worked 3 jobs to pay for her experimental treatments when insurance wouldn't cover them. I'd given everything, my health, my money, my future, to save a woman my husband loved more than me. My name is Iris Chun, and I spent 12 years of marriage being told that loving someone meant sacrificing for them. That being a good wife meant supporting your husband's friendships. That being selfish meant putting your own needs first. Liam had been in love with Amber since high school. Everyone knew it. She'd friend-zoned him, dated other people, broken his heart repeatedly. When she finally agreed to date him senior year, he'd been ecstatic. They'd dated for 3 months before she dumped him for a college guy with more status. Liam had been devastated. And I, the shy girl who'd tutored him in chemistry and listened to him talk about Amber for hours, had been there to comfort him. We'd started dating in college. He'd proposed after graduation. We'd built a life together. But Amber had always been there. The best friend, who needed help moving. The old friend, who needed money for rent. The childhood companion, who needed emotional support through every breakup, every job loss, every minor crisis. And when she'd gotten sick, Liam had asked me to help save her. Please, Iris. I know it's a lot to ask, but she needs a kidney. You're a match. I'll never ask you for anything else. I'd given her my kidney because I loved my husband and believed that's what love meant. Sacrificing your health for his happiness. I'd survived the transplant, but never fully recovered. My remaining kidney struggled. My immune system weakened. I worked myself to exhaustion to pay the medical bills Amber couldn't afford. And Liam had spent those 6 months taking care of Amber during her recovery, while I worked 3 jobs to keep us financially afloat. When I collapsed at work, Liam had been at Amber's apartment helping her redecorate. When I was admitted to the hospital with organ failure, he'd come to visit for 20 minutes before rushing back to check on Amber, who had a headache. I died knowing my husband had never loved me. I died knowing I'd given my health, my money, my life to save a woman who'd taken everything and given nothing back. I died knowing that even in my final moments, Liam chose Amber. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in a morgue. I was 22, sitting in my college apartment while Liam stood in my doorway looking heartbroken. Amber broke up with me, he was saying, tears streaming down his face. I don't understand. I thought we had something real this time. This was the moment. The moment I'd comforted him, held him while he cried, and accidentally started falling for a man who would never see me as anything but the consolation prize. This time, I looked at him and felt nothing but cold clarity. I'm sorry that happened, I said, staying in my doorway instead of inviting him in. Breakups are hard. Can I come in? I just need someone to talk to. I'm actually busy right now. I have a paper due tomorrow. Oh. Liam looked surprised. In our previous timeline, I'd always made time for him, no matter what I was doing. Maybe later then? Maybe. Text me first. I closed the door before he could say more. Over the next week, Liam tried multiple times to engage me in long conversations about Amber, about his feelings, about what he should do. Each time, I was polite but distant. I'm in the middle of studying. I have plans with friends. I need to focus on my own work right now. Liam started showing up at places he knew I'd be. The library, the coffee shop, the gym. Each time, he'd try to start a conversation about his broken heart. Iris, you're one of my best friends. I need you right now. We're not best friends, Liam. We're classmates who study chemistry together sometimes. But we talk all the time. We talk about chemistry. That's different from being someone's emotional support system. You're being really cold about this. I'm being honest. You're hurting and looking for someone to make you feel better. I'm not interested in being that person. Why not? You've always been so understanding before. Before what? We've never had this kind of conversation before. Liam looked confused, probably trying to remember our exact history, and realizing he'd just assumed I'd always been available for his emotional needs. I just thought we were friends. We're acquaintances. There's a difference. A month later, Liam tried a different approach. He asked me out. I've been thinking, he said after our chemistry study session. We get along really well. We have chemistry both literally and figuratively. He smiled at his own joke. Would you want to go to dinner with me? In my previous timeline, I'd been thrilled. I thought he was finally seeing me as more than a friend. This time I knew the truth. He was lonely, I was convenient, and I reminded him of himself before Amber broke his heart. I was safe, uncomplicated, and unlikely to reject him. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? We have fun together. You're rebounding from Amber. You're not actually interested in me. You're interested in feeling better about being dumped. That's not true. Isn't it? When you think about dating me, are you excited about who I am? Or are you relieved that I'm not Amber? Liam opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. That's what I thought. I'm not interested in being someone's second choice. You're not second choice. Yes, I am. And that's fine. But I'm not interested in dating someone who's settling for me because their first choice wasn't available. I walked away, leaving Liam standing in the library looking stunned. Over the next 6 months, I watched Liam try to process rejection from someone he'd assumed would always be available. He cycled through confusion, frustration, and eventually acceptance. He tried dating other people. None of them lasted long. I heard through mutual friends that he kept comparing them to me, then comparing them to Amber, then getting confused about what he actually wanted. I focused on my own life. I applied for internships at companies I'd never had time for in my previous timeline, because I'd been too busy working to support Liam. I made new friends who valued me for myself. I dated people who chose me first, not as a consolation prize. In my previous life, I'd worked 3 jobs after college to help pay off Liam's student loans and support him while he figured out his career path. This time, I took a well-paying job at a biotech company and focused on my own career. I thrived. Promotions came quickly when I wasn't exhausted from working multiple jobs. Friendships deepened when I wasn't constantly canceling plans to help Liam with his latest crisis. My health improved when I wasn't running myself into the ground. 3 years after college, I ran into Liam at a mutual friend's wedding. He'd filled out a bit, looked more mature, seemed more settled. Iris, I've been hoping to run into you. Hi Liam. How are you? I'm good. Working in pharmaceutical sales, finally figured out what I want to do. He paused. I've been wanting to apologize. For what? For how I treated you in college. For expecting you to be my emotional support system without giving anything back. For not seeing that I was taking advantage of your kindness. That's very mature of you. I've been in therapy, trying to figure out why I keep chasing people who don't want me while ignoring people who do. My therapist helped me see some patterns. I'm glad therapy is helping. She helped me realize I was in love with Amber, because loving someone unavailable meant I never had to risk real intimacy, and that I tried to date you as a rebound because you seemed safe and uncomplicated. I was safe and uncomplicated. I was also a whole person with my own needs that you never bothered to learn about. I know that now, and I'm sorry. I appreciate the apology. Is there any chance we could start over? Not dating. I'm not asking for that. Just friends. Real friends, where I actually show up for you instead of just expecting you to show up for me. I studied Liam carefully. He seemed genuine. He seemed to have actually grown. But I also remembered him holding Amber's hand while I died. I remembered working 3 jobs to pay for her treatments. I remembered giving my kidney and having him barely acknowledge the sacrifice. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because even with therapy and growth, you're still the person who would choose Amber over me. That's not a judgment, it's just reality. And I'm not interested in being in anyone's life where I'm always going to be second place. But I'm working on that. I believe you. But working on something doesn't mean it's fixed. And I'm not interested in being the person you practice on while you figure yourself out. That's harsh. That's honest. Liam looked hurt but couldn't really argue. We said polite goodbyes, and I watched him walk away. 2 years later, I heard through the grapevine that Amber had gotten sick again. Leukemia had returned. She needed bone marrow transplant. I was a match. I'd been a match in my previous timeline too. Liam called me out of nowhere. Iris, I know we haven't talked in years, but I need to ask you something. It's about Amber. No. You don't even know what I'm going to ask. You're going to ask if I'll donate bone marrow. The answer is no. Silence on the other end. How did you know? Because it's what you do. Amber has a crisis, and you mobilize everyone you know to save her. But I'm not interested in being part of that anymore. She could die without a transplant. Then she should find another donor. I'm not obligated to give my bone marrow to someone just because I happen to be a match. But you're a match. You could save her life. So could dozens of other people if they got tested. Why is it my responsibility? Because you can help. I can help lots of people. That doesn't mean I'm required to harm myself to do it. It's just bone marrow. The procedure is relatively safe. It's my body. My choice. And I'm choosing not to donate to someone who's never done anything for me except take. That's incredibly selfish. Yes, it is. I'm being selfish. I'm prioritizing my own health and well-being over a stranger's needs. That's called having boundaries. She's not a stranger. She's my best friend. She's your friend, not mine. I've never had a conversation with her that wasn't about you. She's never done anything for me. We're not friends. We're people who happen to know the same person. I can't believe you're this cruel. I'm not cruel. I'm just not self-sacrificing anymore. There's a difference. Liam tried everything. Guilt trips. Emotional manipulation. Promises that he'd owe me forever. Appeals to my compassion. Veiled threats about karma. None of it worked. Finally, he said, "What if I paid you?" Excuse me? What if I paid you for the donation? Whatever you think is fair. You want to buy my bone marrow? I want to compensate you for your time and discomfort. I'm not a vending machine for body parts. And the fact that you think this can be solved with money shows how little you understand about boundaries. I hung up. Liam called back repeatedly. I blocked his number. 3 days later, Amber showed up at my apartment. "I know Liam talked to you," she said when I opened the door. "Yes." "And you said no." "Yes." "Can I ask why?" "Because I don't want to." Amber studied me for a moment. "You know, Liam talks about you sometimes. About how kind you were in college. How patient. How giving. You don't seem like that person anymore." "I'm not. That person almost killed herself trying to make everyone else happy. So now you're just going to let me die? I'm not letting you do anything. Your medical situation isn't my responsibility. You need a donor. I'm not volunteering. Those are just facts. Do you know what it's like? To be sick, to need help, to have someone who could save you just refuse." "Actually, I do." Something in my tone made Amber pause. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I know exactly what it's like to need help and have the person who's supposed to love you choose someone else's comfort over your survival." "I don't understand." "You don't need to. Just know that I've thought very carefully about this decision, and my answer is no. I hope you find another donor." I closed the door in her face. 6 months later, I heard that Amber had found a donor. Not a perfect match, but close enough. The transplant was successful. She survived. Liam sent me one final message. She lived. No thanks to you. I blocked him and moved on with my life. 7 years after avoiding Liam in college, I was 33, 1 year younger than I'd been when I died in my previous timeline. I was healthy, successful, in a loving relationship with someone who chose me first always. I was promoted to director at my company. I'd published research papers. I'd traveled to countries I'd never had time or money to visit in my previous life. I'd built genuine friendships with people who valued mutual support instead of one-sided sacrifice. I was happy in ways I'd never been in my previous timeline, where I'd spent every day exhausted, broke, and dying slowly while supporting people who didn't appreciate it. One evening, I was at a medical conference when I saw Liam across the room. He was with Amber, who looked healthy and vibrant. They were standing very close, the way couples do. They saw me at the same moment I saw them. Liam went pale. Amber gripped his arm. I could have walked away, could have avoided the confrontation. Instead, I walked directly toward them. Liam. Amber. It's been a while. Iris, Liam said, his voice strained. I didn't know you'd be here. I'm keynoting tomorrow, speaking about ethical considerations in donor recruitment. Amber flinched. I see you're doing well, I said to her. Yes. The transplant was successful. I'm glad you found a donor. No thanks to you, Liam muttered. I looked at him directly. No thanks to me. I made a choice about my own body, and you've spent 7 years resenting me for it. That says a lot about you. I asked you for one thing. You asked me to undergo a painful medical procedure with potential long-term health consequences to save someone I barely knew. I said no. That's not selfish. That's normal. She could have died. So could I. So could anyone. None of us are entitled to other people's organs just because we need them. How do you live with yourself? Amber asked quietly. Easily. I prioritized my own health over a stranger's needs. The only people who see that as wrong are people who expected to benefit from my self-sacrifice. We're not strangers, Amber said. We've known each other for years. We've existed in the same social circle for years. That's not the same as knowing each other. Tell me one thing about my life that doesn't involve Liam. One hobby, one goal, one interest. Amber opened her mouth, then closed it. Exactly. You don't know me. You've never bothered to know me. You just expected me to help because Liam asked. That's not fair. It's completely fair. You wanted something from me. I said no. And you've spent 7 years being angry that I didn't sacrifice my health for yours. I almost died, Amber said, her voice breaking. I'm sorry that happened to you. Truly. But your medical crisis doesn't create an obligation for me to harm myself to save you. It's just bone marrow. It's my bone marrow. From my body. And I get to decide what happens to it. Liam stepped forward. You're a terrible person. I'm a person with boundaries. You're just not used to encountering them. You let her almost die. She almost died because she was sick. Not because I refused to donate. Those are completely different things. You could have helped. So could thousands of other people. Why was it specifically my responsibility? Because you were a match. Being genetically compatible doesn't create a moral obligation. If that were true, you'd be equally terrible for not donating your bone marrow, even though you weren't a match. Liam had no response to that. I need to go, I said. I'm meeting my fiancé for dinner. He's the kind of person who would never ask me to harm myself for someone else's benefit. It's a nice change. As I walked away, I heard Amber say to Liam, she really has changed. She was never like this in college. Maybe she was. Maybe you just never noticed because she was too busy doing things for you to have time to assert herself. I smiled as I left the conference hall. 10 years after avoiding Liam in college, I married Michael, a pediatric surgeon who understood the value of bodily autonomy and would never dream of asking me to risk my health for someone else's benefit. At our wedding, my brother gave a toast. I'm so proud of my sister for building a life based on mutual respect and genuine partnership. She's learned that love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. It means choosing someone who would never ask you to. 12 years after college, the length of my marriage to Liam in my previous timeline, I was 44 years old. I was healthy, successful, respected in my field. I'd just published a book about medical ethics and bodily autonomy. A major part of it discussed the societal pressure on women to be donors, caregivers, and self-sacrificers. During the book tour, a young woman approached me after a reading. Your book changed my life, she said. My boyfriend's mother needs a kidney. I'm a match. Everyone's been pressuring me to donate, saying if I really loved him I'd do it. But I don't want to. And reading your book made me realize that's okay. What did you decide? I said no. My boyfriend broke up with me. His family calls me selfish. But I'm not dying slowly because someone else needed my organ. Good for you. Was it hard? Saying no. It was the easiest decision I've ever made. Saying yes would have been hard. Saying yes would have destroyed me. 15 years after college, I received a LinkedIn message from Liam. I've been following your work. Your book is amazing. I finally understand what you were trying to tell me all those years ago. I'm sorry for everything. For using you. For taking you for granted. For trying to guilt you into donating. You were right about all of it. I hope you're happy. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. His apology was for him, not me. It was him processing his guilt, trying to make himself feel better. I was already happy. I'd been happy for 15 years. 20 years after college, on the anniversary of what would have been my death day in my previous timeline, I stood in my home office surrounded by awards, publications, and photos of a life fully lived. I thought about the Iris who'd died at 34, who'd given everything and received nothing, who'd sacrificed her health, her money, her life for people who never valued it. And I thought about this Iris, who'd said no, who'd set boundaries, who'd built a life of mutual respect and genuine love. The first Iris had believed that love meant sacrifice. The second Iris understood that real love never requires you to destroy yourself. Liam had protected Amber, while I sacrificed everything. So I'd been reborn and avoided him at all costs. Not out of cruelty, not out of revenge, but out of the fundamental understanding that my life was mine to live, not his to spend on someone else's benefit. And that was the greatest gift my rebirth had given me. The wisdom to choose myself first. Because in the end, the only person guaranteed to be with you for your entire life is yourself. And that person deserves your protection most of all.